And my daughter at the time, she's 10, she walks in to the kitchen. She's just like, she's acting like she's not listening. And I'm talking to him. And then I hang up and she goes, "Hey, mommy, you know how you tell us that it's not our job to manage yours or dad's feelings? It's your job because you're the adult." And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "You do that with grandpa." And then she just turned around and walked out of the room.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, you're right.
The following podcast is a Healthy Dog production. Welcome to the Healthy Dog Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nigma Talib. I'm a leading naturopathic doctor now for over 20 years, and I've consulted thousands of patients with chronic illnesses. I've had clinics all over the world, and I have a #1 bestseller, Younger Skin Starts in the Gut. Listen, I know there's a lot of health information out there in the health and wellness world, and it can be a bit overwhelming. So I'm here to set the record straight and give you my expertise along with my expert guests here in studio in sunny Los Angeles.
I only take drugs with other people who take them on a regular basis because I don't have time for that.
A lot of chronic diseases stem from mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yes, and you know what I love talking about, right? Poop.
Yes. You can ask me about my poop?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about poop.
Okay, please.
This podcast is your go-to for achieving optimal wellness from the best of beauty and longevity and everything in between, because after all, wellness comes from the inside out. Today, I have a very intuitive guest, no pun intended. Mm-hmm. She's a friend and she's also coached me personally. She's an intuitive life and leadership coach, and she serves as a crisis manager for the Fortune 500 companies. Lucky them. She's the author of Higher Self, Reclaiming the Power of Your Intuition. And she hosts her own podcast, which I absolutely love, with her really good friend, Melissa. It's called Signal. Welcome to the podcast, Mory. I'm so grateful that you took the time to come all the way here. Thank you.
So excited to be here with you. Talking to you is one of my favorite things. So I'm super psyched.
You know, you have been such a lifesaver to me in my times of crisis and, you know, business decisions and, you know, general life. And it's like you just sort of come to the rescue and it's fixed in one session. I don't know how you do it. You're extremely talented at what you do.
Thank you.
No wonder all these Fortune 500 companies are after you. And I know hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, your first book ever is going to be released in March of 2025. Tell me about the book and what made you write your first book?
Yeah. You know, the book is really my way of taking these methods I've created to help people trust their inner wisdom and follow that intuitive wisdom and really hand that method to as many people as possible. I started to feel like one-on-one coaching is so great. It's transformative for them. It's helpful for me. But there's so many people that I think could benefit from learning that trust and learning that intuition is a really practical, pragmatic skill we all have. It's not a woo-woo concept.
Right.
It's not magic. It's not make-believe. It's something that we've relied on as a species forever. And we need to talk about it more. And so I decided to write this book, and it's half memoir. It's about my own life and my work as a crisis manager and how I sort of came to the conclusion that I needed to leave that world and start coaching people so that we didn't keep creating crises that we needed people to rescue us from. And we learned how to operate out of a place of dignity and alignment with our intuition.
Wow. And this is going to be made available to everybody now. And that's what made you write it, because you just wanted it to be out there and available, because I stalk you on Instagram. So
Lucky me.
You say some incredible, if people are not already following you on Instagram, they should. And at the end, we'll give your handle. But you come up with so many interesting questions and really things that will help everyone. I want to, so tell us about the book. I know it might be launched by the time this podcast airs, but tell us give us a sneaky peek into the book. A sneak peek into the book.
Yeah, I think you can expect it's written about you, the reader. So I talk to you directly, and it's meant to kind of trace the course of your life. So it's meant to remind you of those very early years as a child and what joy and curiosity felt like. It's meant to remind you of the moments where maybe you shut down your imagination and your relationship with this intuitive self so that you could fit and find validation. We as beings, we need belonging to survive. And when our care is in the hands of our parents, and our caregivers are often just playing out the same limiting beliefs as their caregivers and on, we look to them to decide what is good and what is bad and what is acceptable and not. And if they can't hold all of us, if they can't hold our truth and they shut us down, often not meaning to, but they do, we build limiting belief systems about ourselves. And, the book really helps you to understand, well, what might those limiting belief systems be so that I can identify what they are, but also where they came from and understand this isn't my truth. This is a seed that was implanted by someone else, maybe out of an act of protection, maybe out of an act of not being conscious, but it really gives you the choice to pluck those seeds out and then decide, well, who am I really if I'm not this limited self, and reintroduces you to your higher self.
Wow. That's really powerful. And is it, talk me through some of the chapters.
Yeah.
Let me know what are some of the chapters in there, the highlights of the different chapters.
I have this chapter in there called, the book's written again to follow the course of your life. So there's a chapter 4 is called The Teenage Hero. And I think it's one of my favorites because everyone who's read it, and even in writing it, I felt like I was in high school again. And it reminds you so much of that rebel. And what I talk about is how that rebel is a part of your higher self. That one that says, no, don't just follow the norm. Or, you need to reject some of your family systems so that you can go out and individuate. That's the whole point, is to learn who you are. And so that reframe on the rebel was really empowering, I think, for my younger teenage self. I think she enjoyed being able to experience herself as, described as a higher frequency, an intuitive frequency. So that one is really great. And then, I spent a long time in corporate America. And so there's a chapter where I really talk about that work to the extent I can. I mean, crisis management is also very confidential.
Right.
But, I talk about a lot of the systems of indoctrination that happen when you go into the working world and how that toxicity can happen, and my own relationship to that toxicity, with the hopes that people can see that there's another way to operate in that world.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, without naming any corporations?
Yeah.
What is the strangest thing you've ever come across?
Oh my God. That's a good question.
If you could share. I don't know if strange is the right word, but what is like the most, ridiculous thing or if it's relatable, if you're allowed to mention
I think some of the most awkward stuff was interpersonal stuff that was happening.
Yeah.
Things like affairs or things that were not supposed to be happening. And having to sit down with people and ask them to tell you what's going on. And you really feel like a therapist in that moment. Like you're really taking in a lot of confidential information. And then, for me, it started to become important towards the end of that part of my career that I was coaching people to find their better self, not just write a bunch of strategies that they utilized to perform attrition and then go back to doing things the old way. And so, in those situations and, as I do crisis management now, it's really a coaching situation. And so, there's awkward moments. I coach a lot of public personalities. We deal with being canceled a lot.
Right.
And so there's certain things that happen that sometimes the ridiculousness comes from others, not the person that's finding themselves in the fire, but assumptions that other people make or stories they run away with and decisions they make about who they think you are. That's ridiculous and also really uncomfortable to hold with your client and hold space for how bad it feels.
Wow. I mean, and I think that's so important right now because cancel culture is so, you can get canceled for saying anything, these days. So I think one of the things that you've taught me personally, I'm going to sort of roll over to something a little bit lighter, is how you taught me that we're all intuitive. And I remember you saying to me, Nigma, you're really intuitive.
You are.
And I've heard that before. And my grandmother used to tell me that.
Yeah.
And, I feel it with patients when I'm with patients. But it's hard to always trust your own intuition. You know that that's what you're supposed to do. So walk us through, what is some of the wisdom you can give us in a time, especially where, people are divided, people are like, there's cancel culture.
Yeah.
How do we manage and get through life
Yeah.
with using our intuition and knowing that we're using it? And how do we know how do we know we're on the right track? You know what I mean?
Such a good question, and such an important question. I think the first tool I always ask people to work with is to understand why they don't trust their intuition. Because once you're enlightened about that, you feel like, wait a minute, I have to make a different choice. And I think that a lot of the reasons that we don't trust our intuition collectively, and particularly women, is because it's been villainized. It's been villainized throughout history. It's been crazy. It's been woo-woo. It's been literally utilized to take women's lives in an era in history where, think about the witch hunts and think about how knowing and a level of wisdom can feel dangerous to systems that want to control you. I know you were trying to make it light, but here I go.
Let's go.
I think we have to understand the conditioning around that
Sure.
word.
I think it's important to know that. Yeah.
And I think that was part of my mission with this book and my work. I call myself an intuitive life and leadership coach. I could be anything. You could call me any kind of coach, but I use that word because I'm trying to take the stigma out of that word, intuition, and make sure that people don't feel like, I'm trying to talk to you about something that's woo-woo. And if you're woo-woo, great, so am I, but it doesn't have to be that way.
PMS to perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause, I've lived through it all. And through every stage, one thing becomes clear. Hormone fluctuations change how our bodies regulate temperature, especially at night. When your body overheats, even slightly, it disrupts deep, restorative sleep. The kind of sleep your hormones, metabolism, and mood depend on. That's why I can't live without my Rani Lounge pajamas. Their advanced technology activates natural fibers, making the fabric moisture resistant, naturally fresh, and ultra breathable, allowing your body to stay cool and regulate temperature the way nature intended. Better temperature control means deeper sleep, better recovery, and a body that feels truly at ease. Whether at home or traveling, staying cool, fresh, and comfortable has never felt so effortless. Go to RaniLounge.com, that's RaniLounge.com, and use my code HealthyDog15 and get 15% off your first order and experience sleep the way it was meant to be. I wonder why we call this woo-woo. Like, why are we even giving it that? Because it's interesting, and being a naturopathic doctor, I've struggled with this personally, with people going, oh, that's some alternative medicine, or that's woo-woo medicine. And it's like, actually, it's science-based medicine that's safe and effective, that doesn't use pharmaceutical drugs as your staple, right? Yeah. So if we sort of package intuition differently, and maybe we have to use the science to cater to those people, right? That population. And then we can use, the other part that people really understand for intuition. So I think you always do that really well.
Thank you.
Whenever I have conversations with you, I think I'm obviously science-based, but I like to hear about things that are not looked in research, right?
Yeah.
Double-blind placebo studies. What does that mean? And are they even double-blind placebo studies? Like, how do you measure that?
Yeah.
So
why we call it woo-woo is because we've been taught to call it woo-woo.
Right. We've been conditioned
by bigger systems that want us to
trust their
them.
gut.
They want us to trust them.
Yeah.
And whether that is corporations, whether that's the pharmaceutical industry, whether that's media, whether that's government, it's villainized for a reason. Us trusting our own knowing is dangerous when an entire system wants you to follow it without checking in with yourself.
That and you're here to set the record straight, and I love that. So, okay, we're all intuitive.
Yes.
I know you told me I was really intuitive, but you said that we're all intuitive, every single one of us. How does one person, if somebody's listening right now, what could you give them? What tool could you give them?
Yeah.
I know you said,
That's the first step.
That's the first
Just
step.
Understand
Yes,
that you've been
understand.
conditioned to think it shouldn't happen.
Yes.
The second step is discernment. What is the difference between a thought that comes from fear or anxiety and the difference between an intuitive thought? So I'm going to ask you, because you are intuitive, what does an intuitive thought feel like to you?
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a knowing.
Yeah. And
It's-
is there a lot of stuff going on, or is
There's
it
no
pretty
fear.
calm?
It's pretty clear. It's, I guess that's where clairvoyant comes from, right?
Yeah.
It's clear.
Yes.
The path is clear. And then the background noise is other people.
Yes.
It's
very
always
good.
if you ever tell someone something.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, no, that's too saturated, or
Yes.
that's too, but you've had an intuition about it.
Yep.
I think that's where things get muddled.
Yes. So 3 things to know about intuition when you're trying to tell the difference. 1, intuition is emotionally neutral. It is not going to bring up an emotion. It
Right.
just drops in like a fact. It's like I tell people, it's like a period at the end of a sentence. It's just there.
Wow.
It's just there. So when you're feeling emotional about something, then that means that's a fear or anxiety voice. And by the way, this is a little tricky. Sometimes you'll have an intuition about something and your fear will grab that information and create anxiety about it.
Got it.
So I tell the story in the book about how I divorced the father of my children. And I knew, I had an intuitive knowing when I was pregnant with my second child, that I had to leave that marriage, that it was not serving my highest good. But fear grabbed that intuitive knowing.
Yes.
And filled my head with all of the can'ts and shouldn'ts. And do you remember you had a single mom? And do you remember how hard that was? And so
Wow.
just know that, it is an emotionless feeling, but your fear and your anxiety will create emotion out of it. So that's the first one, is it's emotionally neutral. The second is, I always tell people, it's the pre-thought. It's like the very first thought that comes to you. The very first feeling, before your intellect or your protection mechanism
Kicks
can
in.
jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your fight or flight,
Yes.
right before that, which is hard to think about, but I guarantee if you meditate on that, or you take that in, the next time around, you'll know what I mean. Like right now, you might not know what I mean, but I promise it'll happen to you. And then you're like, oh, that's what she was talking about. It's the first thing, the first inkling that drops in.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I get that and I write it down.
Yes, good.
So I
great.
have like I should call it intuition journaling.
Yes.
And I think of things and I write them down. And it's so weird, Mory, when I look at my list,
yeah.
it's that exact list that then manifests.
Yes.
Within a year, 2 years, it's all sort of unfolding.
Totally.
So I think for me, what's helped is writing it down, because that fear then comes in
Yeah.
and takes it out.
Yes, exactly. I love that you write it down. I tell people to do that all the time. And then the third one is, we expect intuition to be this like magical conversation that we have with the divine. And sometimes it can be, but intuition can be about little things.
Right.
Intuition can be about like, no, don't go to that dinner tonight.
Right.
I've had that intuition and gone and been like, God damn it, I don't want to be here. Like, I knew it. My intuition was saying, you don't want to be with these people
And
right
your
now.
car gets towed or you have a
Exactly.
flat tire.
Yes, exactly. So, I think dispelling that myth for yourself that it's got to be something massive.
Right.
It's actually building your relationship with intuition is a dance. And it's about really trusting it and following it in those little moments. And when you do, then it gets louder.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I love that. That is so good. Okay. Then we look at trauma, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you about this because I'm sure do you talk about ancestral trauma in your book?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go there
Yeah.
because it is
I'm going to sip my vitamin C as you talk about trauma.
I'm gonna get a sip as well. So ancestral trauma, is it even possible to heal it? Is it always going to be there? Is it something you can recognize that's there? And how do we heal that?
Ooh, just a little small tiny question.
Just a tiny question.
Absolutely, it is possible to heal it. And when you spend the time and energy to heal it, you are releasing your ancestors from that experience as well. Energy moves forward and backward. And we are so powerful when we are manifest in a human body, so much so that what we do in this lifetime reverberates out into the universe. And so you are doing a service to yourself, to future generations, and to past generations when you heal it. So yes, it is possible to heal. And awareness is everything. Understanding, where is this ancestral trauma within me? What are the beliefs I hold that come from that trauma? And how can I begin to, I say, like, be an investigative journalist in your own healing journey? What is the root cause of this? What my ancestors, what may have they believed that caused them to create this belief system out of a survival strategy? I'm a child of immigrants from Iran. There's a lot of ancestral trauma that comes with being an immigrant, right?
Definitely.
You understand
I
this.
understand, yes.
There's a lot of beliefs about how you have to assimilate and how you have to be perfect and how you have to succeed and have accomplishment as an immigrant child.
Absolutely.
Right? And I have really had to do the work for myself of understanding, well, where did this belief system come from for them? Well, it came from being in an environment they don't know, they don't understand. The only way to survive is to be excellent. And so if I have this perfectionism within me, that's not necessarily my organic self. That's a belief system they held on to as a form of protection for me that no longer serves me now.
Wow.
They needed it then, and much gratitude for them.
Right.
But do I still need that level of perfectionism now, or is it causing me to suffer? Is it actually doing the opposite of the thing that it's trying to do?
That's why we see all these immigrant parents, right? My dad walked me through to university and made me go into all the biochemistry, organic chemistry.
Yeah.
He signed me up to all those courses. And it's like, you're going into sciences.
Yes,
you know, it was just like, I didn't have a choice. I'm glad I did it. Like it was not fun.
Totally.
But, you know, it does come, you can see it in the immigrant parents.
Yeah.
Before we delve into it a little deeper, just for those listening, I just had a thought. A lot of people might not even know what ancestral trauma is.
Yeah.
So maybe you're going to explain it
you.
way better than I am.
You know, it's interesting. Science has begun to really accept the fact that ancestral trauma is a real scientific thing. It is a study called epigenetics.
Right.
And it is a study of how our genes actually shift when there's been trauma in our bloodline. And what they have found is that these traumatic experiences literally cause an indentation in the DNA. And that indentation is then passed on from one generation to the next. There's been studies done on families of Holocaust survivors. There's been studies done on women who were pregnant during 9/11 and on then their babies. And then, of course, there's been studies done on mice that have had one generation, you know, face some kind of impetus, and then they've watched generation after generation. In the actual molecular structure, there is an indentation. There is a difference. So when we say ancestral trauma, we're talking about an actual scientific thing that's happening in the body. And so what that means is that that trauma that happened in that ancestral line, and it can go back 10 generations even.
Wow.
But whatever that trauma is, it's a lot, right? I always say it's like, don't
It's
be
a lot
so
to
hard on
carry.
yourself.
It's my ancestors.
Yeah,
That's going to be my thing from now on.
Exactly.
It's their fault.
We won't even get into the past lives that also create.
Oh my God.
But anyway, so when that's happening for your ancestors, you know, that fight or flight response is going to create a strategy within them, a contraction protection strategy, whatever that looks like. And we carry that strategy within us as well. So that when we feel like we're facing a danger, it will not be the same danger because we've evolved. But if it feels similar, then we will utilize the same strategy. But what I say to people is like, when we do that unknowingly, it's like using an iPhone that's on the first ever iOS. It's not updated to today's technology.
Wow.
So that's how you interact with these belief systems of, yes, they created it in that generation of whatever was happening for them. But is that necessary today? Or am I using an outdated playbook in an updated environment? And is that going to serve me? So it's about carrying belief systems and strategies from your ancestors to survive in current times.
So can we hit Control Alt Delete and reprogram?
Yes.
How do we do,
Absolutely.
like, how do we reset this for ourselves to get rid of that trauma?
You know, I think that there are so many tools and people available to us now to do that. You know, I think, first of all, healing in any way. So that could be a therapist, a life coach, a shaman, like whatever feels that you're drawn to, really being able to articulate these limiting beliefs and trace them back to their origin with whoever you choose to do that
Right.
with, or yourself and your journal. But I always tell my clients, list out what are the limiting beliefs that are stopping me from achieving this thing, whatever it is, right? What are all of the things I believe about myself that are limiting me, stopping me from doing it? And then ask, well, where could this have come from? What do I know about my family line? And where could that have come? Start talking to your family about it. Ask your parents, whatever makes sense. But that's why I say investigative journalist, investigate. That awareness alone is so healing, because then you get to understand, oh, this doesn't have to be the way that I operate. It's just a way I was subconsciously operating. Now I've brought it up to the conscious mind. The conscious mind now gets to make a choice. Do I want to keep using this contracted strategy, or am I curious about, well, what's my organic strategy, which is coming from your higher self, that frequency that wants you to thrive, not just to survive.
That is brilliant. And I hope you talk about that. I'm sure you talk about it in your book.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I want to share something that could literally slow down how you age, inside and out. Let's talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or HBOT. You've probably heard of it being used for athletes or wound healing. But what you may not know is the latest research is showing powerful benefits for cellular regeneration, brain health, and even reversing some biological markers of aging. Hyperbaric chamber works where you breathe in oxygen at higher than normal pressure. This process stimulates your tissues with oxygen and beyond what your body can normally get in. That extra oxygen jumpstarts your cells, helps natural repair processes, reduces inflammation, and boosts collagen production. It even stimulates the growth of new blood vessels. Studies have shown improvements in telomere length, which are kind of like protective caps on your DNA that shorten as you age. Longer telomeres, that's linked to healthier aging. If you're feeling the effects of aging, maybe it's slower recovery, brain fog, or skin that's lost its luster and glow, hyperbaric oxygen might be a powerful tool to help you feel sharper, stronger, and more vibrant. Go to oxyhealth.com, that's OXYHEALTH.com, and type in discount code HealthyDoc10 for your first order. Speaking about energy,
Yeah.
this collective energy. Explain to me the collective energy and how the collective energy can impact us. As I know by the time this podcast will air, it'll be, months down from when the election took place.
Yeah.
And, you have 50% of the United States feeling one way,
Yeah.
ecstatic, happy,
Right.
running around, with flags and excited. And then you have the other half in deep depression and fear
Terror. Yeah.
and terror. How do we deal with this collective energy, and what can we do as individuals
Yeah.
to bridge that energy in a positive way to move forward, because I just feel like there's so much division. I mean, this election is just one part of it, but how can we collectively, what would you say to a person that was coming to you for counseling for it, or what would you say to all of us out here?
I'm going to take the spiritual path on this one and really just
Okay.
give it to you straight.
She's like,
from
I'm
my
going spiritual.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are all a collective consciousness.
Right.
What does that mean? It means that we all come from the same source energy, whatever you want to call it, however you want to believe. But all of us human beings come from that source energy. And my belief is that we are here so that that source energy can experience itself. We are manifest in a tangible human body so we can have tangible experiences, so that that collective consciousness can literally experience life. If you're not in a human body, you don't have tangible experiences to then learn from and grow. And make no mistake, the entire point is expansion. It's about learning, expanding, learning, expanding. That's what this collective consciousness, this source energy desires. And that is what we are here to facilitate. When we behave as though we come from different source energies, or we are somehow separated, we are buying into an illusion
Right.
that is not the reality of what we are. It's like think about a giant web. We're all parts of this giant web, lighting up at different times and at different parts, having different experiences and experiencing the concept of life. When we believe that we are not a part of that web, we are still there, but we sort of disconnect from it. And I really believe the division we're seeing is a fear-based disconnection from that web. They're still there. So this is the part y'all may not like. And I'm saying it now and people are looking at me like, are you crazy? But what we have to do is remember that even though we don't agree with people, they're still part of that collective consciousness. And they're still valuable human life. Even though, and I'm going to say this as someone who coaches a lot of LGBTQ and trans people, even though sometimes our lives are not respected, right? Even though there's a feeling of harm that's real and true.
That's real,
I do not want to gaslight. That is real.
Right.
And yet, if we forget that they hold value as a human life, then we are disconnecting that web even further. And our job when we have this awareness is to remain the light so that all of the other lights can turn on. Like think about a motherboard. You want them all lighting up. And we have to remain online. And remaining online is to really be loving with yourself first. That's why I wrote this book. It has to start with loving yourself and seeing your higher self as worthy.
Wow.
When we have that worthiness, then we can't help but to see worthiness in other people. When you see people treating you as though you are worthless, it is because they believe they are inherently worthless. Always. You have to believe it to then embody it.
Right.
So if we can truly understand our worthiness, then we will remain that light and then we can help other people to light back up again. That's my hope.
I totally resonate with that. It's exactly how I feel. I feel like nothing is going to change unless we all we know that there's no power bigger than us.
Right.
There's no power bigger than the community that's going to change us. Yes, there are real big threats out there, from a change of government, something like this. But, I think it's important, collectively to light up the board.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And
thank you. It's hard. It's really hard to do.
It's hard to do, but it's a feeling. And once you embrace that feeling and you spread that word of that feeling, and I think your book is really going to do that for people. I think we really need a book like yours. I couldn't be happier that you've finally written this book, and it's your first book. So I'm sure there's going to be many more to come after this.
Nigma's my new agent, guys.
I'm hired. Dante, I have another job.
Yeah, you're not busy enough, so let's give you yet another.
Well, I want to pivot to another topic, a topic that I have been guilty of. I tease my mom about it a lot. She gets so mad at me when I tell her this, but it's something I've really worked on, and it's people pleasing.
Oh, yeah.
And if you can give us like a people pleasing 101, Mory, just to break it down, like why do people become people pleasers? And how do we identify when we see a people pleaser, and how do we help them in that to not be people that we love to not be a people pleaser? Because they take it very offensively when you tell them that. So it's like, it's something that I do feel that is a really important topic, because it really takes away that self-love.
Yes.
That people pleasing. Give us a breakdown for those listening.
So we talked about those survival strategies that we create when we're itty bitty. People pleasing is one of the main ones.
Right. Okay.
And it is this idea that if I am good and mom is happy or dad is happy with me, then at that young age, when our survival is in their hands, then I will be safe. So it's a really critical strategy for survival. And I tell people this all the time. When we do sessions, we'll go back. I call them visitations. We'll go find that little one who created the strategy. And we will just, first of all, thank that little self, because that's a brilliant idea that they had when they were 4 or 5. Like, you want to survive? We better make sure these people who feed us like us. And often, again, I'm not a therapist, so I try not to use super therapy language, but I do know that this is true. often many of us who are people pleasers had some form of narcissism in our caregiving. And again, narcissism, not to mean that it's malignant. It can be garden variety narcissism, but the idea that, a parent or a caregiver is only able to really think of their own needs and themselves.
Because they're surviving.
And they're surviving. And narcissism is often a survival strategy of trauma, for sure. And so if you've had parents like that, where they parentify the child because the child then has to take care of them emotionally, mentally, then it's very easy to become a people pleaser. And you decide that you need to put their needs first. And by the way, they also validate that to you because that's the way they see the world, that their needs, their views, their ideas are paramount. And so you get into this echo chamber with them, which is like, okay, I'm going to make you put your needs first. They're like, yes, you are. And you then go into the world, and that's your strategy for relating to people. Remember, we want to find belonging. That's one of our basic human needs. And so when you want to then have loved ones, friends, intimate relationships, bosses, you tend to utilize the same strategy of your needs come before mine so that I can be of value to you. And that is my only value to you.
Wow.
I think a lot of us do it.
Oh, I mean, I've learned to do it less.
Yes.
Because I feel like it doesn't serve the other person.
No, it's very disempowering.
Right. And it doesn't serve me. So, and I grew up with a mom that was a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Bless her. And she gets so mad at me when I tell her
to say
this.
that.
But she's in a weird way, she's becoming less of a people pleaser. She's like in her power now.
I love that.
I think I learned to tell her in a way that was a little bit more delicate rather than calling her a people pleaser.
Yes, agreed.
I think it was
not work.
I think my delivery was really bad.
Right.
But I think she got it, and she's really learning, and it's funny because I'm learning too.
Yeah.
At the same time, and our relationship is getting stronger. So
I love that.
It's really, with moms, listen, all of us love our moms, but they can be. It's tough because we see ourselves in the mirror, right?
Exactly.
We see all the things, the ancestral trauma.
Yes. And sometimes we have to understand sometimes you're born to parents where your consciousness is wider.
Yeah.
And you're meant to be a teacher for them.
Sure.
And it's hard because that doesn't fit the, what you need from them. You need them to always be the loving, wiser one.
Yeah.
But sometimes our consciousness expands beyond theirs. That's actually what evolution is. That's what's meant to happen. But our parents don't love to hear that. I have a teenage daughter, and I don't always love when her delivery is like making me feel stupid.
What does she do? What does she say? I've met your daughter. She's so beautiful.
Thank you. I have to say, people keep telling you like, oh, teenage girls, it's so unfair. It's such a terrible PR campaign for teenage girls. They're awesome. She's amazing.
Oh, she is amazing.
And
she
loving
is.
and wise. And we call her a little savage because if she thinks something, she's just going to tell you. She's not going to be worried about, you need to go take care of your own feelings. I'm just going to tell you what I'm seeing. And, often she's right. But to your point about delivery, we all have little egos. We get a little sad when our kids tell us things. So I relate to your mom in that way. But, I really try to practice what I preach and see the wisdom in what she and my sons tell me. Because
what has she told you? I'm curious. What has she called?
Okay, I have a story. I don't know if I should tell it.
Tell it. So
I'm remarried, and we were getting married, and COVID happened. So our wedding got delayed. And my father is an event planner, and he lives in Michigan. And I don't have a very close relationship with him because he wasn't around, but I was trying to really lean on him and build this relationship.
Sure.
And the wedding had gotten moved back. I was devastated. I called him because he's doing weddings.
Right.
And I'm on the phone with him, and he's on speakerphone, and I'm telling him like how I'm feeling, looking for fatherly.
Right.
And my dad starts talking about how great his events are going, and isn't it wonderful that the bride was so happy with me last week. And my daughter at the time, she's 10, she walks in to the kitchen. She's just like, she's acting like she's not listening, and I'm talking to him, and then I hang up, and she goes, "Hey, mommy, you know how you tell us that it's not our job to manage yours or dad's feelings? It's your job because you're the adult." And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "You do that with grandpa." And then she just turned around and walked out of the room.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Like in that case, her delivery was so sweet and she was little, but it was like this reflection of, you're teaching me not to take care of someone else's emotions and honor my own. And there you are, you're devastated. He's not showing up for you.
Right.
And there you are entertaining a conversation about a wedding about a stranger in Michigan that like you don't care about. And she just was like, there's the mirror.
Wow, they're so
wise.
Yeah, because her plate is so clear.
Exactly.
It's not stuffed with all this other stuff on it, you know?
Totally.
Wow. And she learned that from you. And what about your son? What is he? He seems
so
really
sweet.
quiet. He's so sweet.
He's a sweetheart. He is definitely the empath in the family with me. So he and I are like two peas in a pod. All we do is ping off each other's feelings. My husband and my daughter walk around being like, oh God, these two with their emotions.
There they go again.
There they are being emotional. He's really intuitive. And so he's been my practice for how to cultivate intuition in a very intuitive child. And it's been really fun to do the opposite of some of the things that were done with me lovingly. My mom had the best of intentions.
Of course, yes.
But, you know, sometimes she'd be like, that's not real, or don't be scared of the dark, or whatever. But it's like, I'm sensing stuff. I'm sensing energy. And he can do that. And so I've really learned with him how to parent and cultivate intuition in a child by constantly being like, I really trust your feeling. Like, your first feeling about everything is usually really spot on. What do you think about this? And it's really helped him to come out of his shell and be more vocal about his thoughts and his feelings. And so it's like I got another little me. I always say he feels like a spirit that's been with me every single lifetime, just right next to me.
He is, and he's so like, you can just see he's very analytical. He's always watching. Doesn't say too much, you know.
He's amazing. And then I have two stepsons. Like we have so many
You're like the
teenagers
Brady
around
Bunch.
us right now. Yeah, they're amazing. So don't buy into the BS that teenagers are
No,
difficult.
and I hear that, and I see a lot of my friends with children, and you know, patients with teenagers, and they are something else.
Yeah.
Like they are like really incredible.
Yes.
You know, they weren't at all like us when we were younger.
It's true.
It's night and
generation
day.
Is I think a lot more grounded, I want to say, or wiser in some way.
Yeah. And you would think it would be the opposite with all the social media and, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know.
I
We'll
think
see what they do.
Well, that's a good thing anyways.
We need them.
We need them.
Yeah, we do.
We really do need them.
Yep.
I've built my entire clinical philosophy and even wrote a book called Younger Skin Starts in the Gut around one simple truth. If your gut isn't optimal, nothing else works. Genova Diagnostics GI Effects Test is the gold standard in functional stool testing, mapping your microbiome, digestion, inflammation, and nutrient absorption with clinical precision. It's a crappy job, but someone has to do it. And no one does it better than Genova. Visit genovaconnect.com and use my code HEALTHYDOC15 for 15% off your first stool test. You touched on narcissists and narcissism. Is there like a black and white narcissist, or is there like a spectrum of different forms of narcissism?
It's a good question. And I always like to again say, I'm not a therapist, but in my coaching and in what I have seen,
which you've seen a lot, by the way. So
yes, absolutely, there's a spectrum, and that's why I said malignant narcissist, garden variety narcissist. Right? I think we are seeing some malignant narcissists. And
what does that mean?
Malignant means that your intentions are not good.
Okay,
that you are intending to accumulate
to hurt someone.
Power and
so
create
give me
harm.
an example of that. She's like, do I dare? Yeah, do it.
Well, I think our current president, by the time this comes out, is a
President-elect
good example
Trump,
of a malignant narcissist, which is just about fully focused on self, but also in a way that knowingly creates harm. Wow. And I mean, it's been clearly talked about, just the sexual predatory nature of this individual. So we've seen the harm just in that one way. Now we can multiply it by all the other ways. So that's an example of a malignant narcissist creating harm without care and without worry for others. I think on the other side of the spectrum is, like we said, a survival strategy of putting yourself first, but not intending to create harm out of that. And it does create harm, obviously,
right? Especially
if you're parentified as a young child. That is a really hard, and what I mean by that is you are the parent. You're the one that has to be solid in some way that they can't be. That creates harm that obviously then there's therapy to heal through. But a garden variety narcissist is just someone who is more concerned or almost incapable of thinking about the other person's needs or perspective in a situation and that they just focus on themselves. And, you know, I think that when you are a loving, empathetic person or an empath, you're the perfect you're the perfect magnet for a narcissist, especially if you're a people pleaser.
Oh gosh. So if you have the people pleaser and you're an empath, okay,
You're
no
gonna,
wonder
the,
it makes
the
sense.
narcissists love you because it's all about them, and you're like, sure, it's all about you. First of all, I can feel your feelings,
Yeah.
so you don't even have to articulate them, and then I'm gonna make sure I fix them without you even having to lift a finger. And I've had my fair share of narcissists attracted to me, and when I was young, it was really great because I was gonna fix them, obviously,
Right.
until I realized, oh no, that's definitely not a fun job.
And you got out of that phase and
Got out of
now
that
look
phase.
at you.
Yeah, but it took a lot of work on myself. And what I want people to know whenever I talk about these things is like, I'm not talking to you from a position of privilege. I'm talking to you from a position of having walked the path.
Right.
And I tell my clients this all the time. I will never ask you to do something I haven't done myself first,
I love that.
because it's hard.
It's hard. Yeah, it is. It's work. And it's work that's going to be well worth it in the end.
Right.
Because look at where you've come.
Thank you.
It's pretty amazing. I want to say one more thing. For people out there, you know, in everyday life, they're feeling lost. What would you say to them? What does that time reflect? And is there a silver lining around being lost?
Yeah. You know, for me in my life, every time I've felt lost, it's been such a sign that I'm disconnected from myself.
Right.
And I'm disconnected from my higher self, from the frequency that is constantly, lovingly guiding me towards speaking my truth, towards understanding, what do I really need and want right now? And am I creating the kind of conditions where my needs and wants are able to be met? Which means having some boundaries and saying no when I mean no, and saying yes when I mean yes. And so I think that if you're feeling lost, it's really great to stop and check in with, like, where am I? Where is my connection with my desire, my longing, my needs, and my dignity? And when you can look at those things and you can find yourself again, then you can clearly articulate what you want. And I always say the universe is waiting. Just tell me what you want. I'm here to show up and give it to you. But you have to be clear, because they're not mind readers.
Right.
So it's really about first honoring the fact that you are a being that has inherent dignity, and you should always be dignified. And what I mean by that is self-worth. You are a worthy being. And because you are a worthy being, you are here with a purpose. And the way that you figure out what that purpose is to honor your longings. What do you really want? We've been taught to have so much shame around desire. And I'm thinking that book number 2 is going to be about this, because I'm really been talking a lot about, like, desire is not a bad thing, and you can desire a million different things. And those are clues towards what you're actually meant to do. Desire is an intelligent part of you.
Absolutely. And you shouldn't be ashamed of desiring
Correct.
something or envious to somebody else that's doing what you want to do.
Right. I actually think envy is also a very good way of looking at what you want.
Right.
Like, if you can just not have shame about it. And we both know Elise.
Yes,
Lauren.
it's in her book.
Yep, she
Yes,
talks about envy, and I love the way she talks about envy. So shout out to her. But that is, I think, a good clue about what you want. But I think in terms of being lost, it's like stopping to ask, do I even know what I want? Do I even believe I'm worthy of what I want? And if not, then I'm going to start there and do the work on that.
I love it. This is brilliant. I'm sure our listeners are going to take so much from this this show. And last but not least, I wanted to ask you before we end something completely different.
Okay.
And I mess this up every time because I forget what the love languages are, because I only know mine.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what are your love languages?
My love language, I think, is words of affirmation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's my number 1. And then I think my number 2 might be, what's the one, like, touch?
Physical touch. Physical touch.
Although I just realized, I was working with a healer on something, that I have to be the one to initiate the physical touch.
Ooh.
I have some stuff about it happening to me without. Anyway, you didn't ask.
You
that.
like it when you get it, but
I
it
like
has
it
to
when
be
I
on
get it,
your
but I have to be
terms.
really open to it. But yeah, I think it's words of affirmation. I really like to be told that I'm valued.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well,
Which
you're
you just did a ton of today. So thank you for
you
giving
are
me
so
my love
well.
language.
I'm also going to do something because mine is acts of service.
That doesn't surprise me about you. That was the very first thing you ever did was be like, come, let me give you this and that. And you sent me your products. And I was like, what a generous soul you are.
I guess you give out what you want to get, right?
That's very true.
And mine is definitely words of service. So I wanted to give you something as a gift.
This is
And
exciting. I
it
see the
is
Dr. Nigma bag
It's
coming out.
yeah, it's a funny gift.
Okay.
Well, it's a gift that everyone should do. It is a stool test.
I've seen you talk about this.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I am.
So you're going to do a 3-day poop test,
Okay.
and it's going to measure your gut microbiome.
Okay.
The test is by a company called Genova.
Okay.
And I just love them so much. I have been using them for 20 years. And I think it'll be really good to master your intuition because we know your gut feeling. And so I thought, what a good gift to give Mory.
So good.
It's got your name on it.
I see. I've never received a stool test as a gift.
Listen.
This is so meaningful.
It'll only come from me.
Yeah,
I mean,
I see that.
I'm known as the poop doctor, so I've really made a name for myself. So, as soon as you complete this test, I will get your results and I'll review them with you, and we'll find out who's living in your gut, the good, the bad, the ugly.
Okay.
And then I've given you some goodies, obviously some supplements to keep you
favorites.
through the Christmas holiday going, or the New Year's and Valentine's Day, all of that.
Oh, Nigma, that's really generous. Thank
Because
you.
I love you. Thank
I
you
love
so much for coming on the show. And
you.
I'm sure we're going to get so many questions about some of the things that you've mentioned. And I think we really need this right now. And we really need your book. So hurry up, HarperCollins, and get it out because we need it. The world needs it. Thank you, Mory, for coming on. And where can people find you before?
Oh, yes. You can follow me on Instagram at Mory Fontanez.
And where can we find your book?
And you can order my book, Signal, Reclaiming the Power of Your Intuition, basically anywhere you order books, Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble. And then you can listen to my podcast, Signal with Mory and Melissa, anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yes, you have to listen to her podcast because it is really, really incredible. Again, the book is called Higher Self, Reclaiming the Power of Your Intuition. Thank you, Mory.
Thank you, Nigma.